Welcome to the Present and Sober podcast with your hosts, Sam Goldfinch and Ellie Crow. If you want to make your life bigger, not smaller, then this is the podcast for you. If you can sense that you're destined for more and you're curious about how drinking could be holding you back, listen in and come on this journey with us. Through the interplay of mind and body practices, we will help you elevate your daily life and discover the wonder and potential of going alcohol-free. Let's make life bigger together. Hey team, okay, first thing, it is officially the 100th episode of the Present and Sober podcast. 100 weeks! How did that happen? And so look, thank you so much. And I know on behalf of Ellie and all of the guests and anyone, like the amount of people that have reached out and said their lives have been touched or changed by what's happening here is just, it's just amazing. It's so amazing. So thank you so much. And I can't believe that we're 100 episodes in. Absolutely amazing. So cool. So to market, we've got something really special. We've got Jeff Salzenstein with us. Now, hopefully I just got Jeff's name right. I'll let you be the judge of that. I struggled with it a bit at the beginning of the episode, as you're going to find out. But this is super exciting and a bit different. Linny McGivern introduced us to Jeff after she was really impacted by a talk that he was giving that she attended live. And, you know, Jeff was a pro tennis player, a seriously good tennis player. So he has a huge amount to share from his life as a pro. And also his life working with people to do it with peak performance and just kind of just helping people to live their best life. He's got so many great things to share. And Jeff's also here to share from the heart about his brother and his brother's story. And it's a really, really moving story that I think all of us can learn something from. So the episode's kind of in two halves. The second half, Jeff talks about his brother, so be sure to hang around for that. Really impactful episode the whole way through, and a great way to celebrate 100 of these episodes. As you can tell, I'm a little bit excited, so I best shut up now and just hand over to me, Ellie, and Jeff. So without further ado, I will do that. Love you all. You're all rock. Let's go. Amazing. Hey team, this is a long time coming, and we've got Jeff with us now. I'm just about to try and pronounce Jeff's. He's been training me how to pronounce his surname, so it's Jeff Salzenstein. Is that right? Got it right?
It's close. It's Saul. Can you give me a Saul? Instead of Saul? Saul. Yeah. Salzenstein.
Salzenstein. There we
go.
Boom. This has been my favorite episode to record for ages, seeing you worry about pronouncing somebody's surname.
It's important. You got to get these things right. Jeff, dude, it's so good to have you here. I know that we've been talking about this for a while now, and we're really excited to have you here because not only do you have some incredible stuff to share around alcohol, which we talk about a lot, but also your professional life as a tennis player. I know that you were a seriously good tennis player, so we'd love to hear about that. And then also some really powerful stuff to share about your brother and his journey as well. So thank you for coming, and we're really excited to have you here, man.
Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure, and I am so looking forward to diving in and just helping the audience and sharing stories and strategies to help us all lead better, healthier lives.
Yeah, awesome. We're all about that.
We should also just say that this is brought to us thanks to Linny, our good friend Linny. You nearly missed her out.
Sorry, this is why I don't do intros. Thanks, Linny. Yeah, it's lovely to be introduced, particularly when we know that Linny was really impacted and touched by your shares when she saw you talking and speaking. So that's really amazing.
Thank you.
So man, I don't know where it makes sense to start. Wherever makes sense to you. If you want to talk about your own personal journey, then go for it. Just fill us in.
I like to start in the middle of the story.
Oh, I do that.
Let's start right in the middle.
Love it.
Okay. It's 1997. I'm playing a second round US Open night match in front of 24,000 people in Arthur Ashe Stadium, which is the big stadium at the US Open. Millions of people watching on TV. John McEnroe, probably the most famous tennis personality in the world, is announcing the match. I'm playing world number 2, Michael Chang. And I'm this upstart professional tennis player. I had just graduated from Stanford University a year earlier. It's my first opportunity on the big stage. And I'm playing in front of these millions of people. And I find myself up 5-4 in the first set. and I'm serving for the first set, and I have set point, which means I'm 1 point away from winning the first set off of Michael Chang, a Grand Slam champion. And I hit this beautiful wide slice serve. I come into the net. I hit a beautiful backhand volley to the open court. Chang's one of the fastest guys in the world. He can't reach it. I win the first set. The crowd absolutely erupts. John McEnroe is saying, who is this guy? Where did he come from? This lefty from Stanford, just like me. And the TV cameras catch me as I'm kind of backing up after I win this point and I win the first set. And I've got a little smirk on my face. And I'm looking to my box with my family and my friends saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm really here in this moment. And I have this little smirk. And that's when I tell people the match ended. And the reason that the match ended is that the dominant thought in my mind in that moment was, thank God you didn't embarrass yourself tonight. And I like to start with that story because I believe that it shares a lot about mindset, a lot about beliefs, equal parts extraordinary. Here I am on this big stage doing something that, 0.1% of the world can even get to. But in the same breath, I'm ordinary, just like another human being with limiting beliefs and things that are holding us back. Now, I ended up losing that match in 4 sets, and it was an entertaining match. And guess what? I didn't embarrass myself. But I certainly didn't keep my foot on the gas and dominate and take down Michael Chang and win that match. And I think it just really speaks to our beliefs about how we see the world, what holds us back. And I know we're going to talk about alcohol and get into how our beliefs around alcohol impact choices that we make. So as a mindset coach, as an executive coach, as a performance coach, I'm always trying to help people question or challenge their beliefs. And I always like to start with that story because it takes us right into the middle of the scene of what I did for a living. And then obviously there's backstory behind it, how I even got to that point. And then there's a lot of stuff that came after that as well.
Goodness me.
Yeah, that's an amazing, to have experienced that, pretty amazing, very cool. And I love how you put that, the kind of the extraordinary element of that. And then the also, the things that we all have, the internal battles that we have, the kind of limiting beliefs, the stuff that can hold us back. And well, hey, I love that you started in the middle. Where do we go from there?
We can go anywhere you want. We can go before, we can go after.
Well, where
you want me to pick?
Yeah, man. Well,
Sure.
I would absolutely love to know. And I know, like I said before, I think the story of you overcoming so many of the things that you've had to overcome in order to get to that level of performance is deeply interesting. But, are there, leading up to that, what was the role that alcohol had? What was the role of using that as a way to kind of either, how did that marry with that life? Did it marry with that life, or was it not around at that point?
So leading up to that moment when I was 23 years old on that big stage, I grew up in Colorado. My parents were tennis players. I was holding a tennis racket when I was 2 years old. My parents divorced at I was 4 years old. And I always tell people, I think I made the decision when I was 4 years old for me to get love and for me to be validated and for me to be seen in the world as I was just going to be great. I was just going to be perfect. I was going to be the 4.0 student, get all A's in school. I'm going to have my shirt buttoned up like it is now. Right now, I'm not tucked in, but my mom tucked in my shirt. Everywhere I went, I was like the perfect child, right? Mm-hmm. And I think others, through a divorce or some things in life, they may have chosen a different path. They may have chosen to maybe get in trouble to get attention. And so for me, I just found sport. I found academics, and I excelled at a young age in tennis. I was a national champion by age 12. At 15 and a half, I was 5'4", 102 pounds, and I could barely see over the steering wheel. And that's when my junior tennis ranking went like this. So I went from being number 1 in the country at 12 to dropping like this. And again, 15 and a half years old, that's a pivotal defining moment where you may quit tennis or back off and then start hanging out with your friends. And maybe you start drinking a little bit, whatever. Mm-hmm. I didn't do that. I refocused and said, listen, my dream is to go to Stanford. Had a dream since a goal since I was 12 years old. So I was manifesting before I even knew what manifestation was.
Sure.
And I just rededicated myself, got back to the top of the rankings, and ended up going to Stanford, got a college scholarship to Stanford. And during that time, the first time I ever got drunk was the night after we lost the high school state tennis championships. And I've never told this story publicly. I've told it to my friends, but I remember I was the last one of my friends to get drunk. So I was always, again, the squeaky clean guy doing all the right things. And I remember getting drunk that night, and I was very sick. I was on the toilet vomiting. And my mother walked into the bathroom with my friends kind of helping me. And I looked up and I saw her, and I go, oh my gosh, I'm in so much trouble. And she went back to her bedroom, and she came back with a camera and started taking pictures of me. And she was basically laughing. She was smiling. So one, I was shocked that she didn't scold me in that moment. But it was kind of interesting to have a parent who is normally pretty strict. In this case, she was like, oh, kid's just being a kid tonight. I know he's okay. So we fast forward to Stanford. I go to Stanford, and I really struggled. I had a great freshman year, but I struggled because I didn't have a great serve. And I remember I started drinking a little bit more in college. But again, for me, alcohol was what you did in college. It's what you did kind of as an athlete. But I always kind of had that line like, hey, I'll play around with it, but I'm not going to let it take control of my life. And I did a pretty good job of that. It was more of a social thing. It was for me, drinking was more to have more courage in social situations, and really to get the girl. That was what allowed me to have a little more confidence to be able to go and speak to more people, especially women. But honestly, I can tell you that I was more on the side with alcohol where it never really took control of my life. The times when I really struggled with it, probably in my early 20s, is after I played Cheng. And what happened there, and again, it never really became a problem per se, but 3 months after I played Cheng, I hurt my ankle in an off-season training session. And it was misdiagnosed for 8 months. So now I wasn't playing tennis. I was back home in Denver. I had graduated from college, and my friends were all going out to the bars. And I found myself in this really confusing place where for 6 weeks I would train hardcore like a Zen monk and eat really well and train. And then for the next 6 weeks, I'd be going to the bars 3 or 4 nights a week because I was injured and I didn't really have that training as a boundary. And so I kind of picked it up there. It took about 18 months where I was in and out of that. But certainly I didn't have someone in my life to tell me the dangers or how it could hurt my performance. It was just kind of what everyone did 25 years ago, which I'm dating myself now sharing that information, but we didn't have all of this awareness around alcohol-free lifestyle then. And again, it never really was a problem for me, but it's certainly, when I look back on it, I would have done it differently.
Yeah. Well, that's a really powerful share, because I know that me and Ellie both, we absolutely love it when people come on and say, this may not have been put into a typical problem category, but I can reflect and I can see the impact it had regardless, and the, and how that can be. So what happened? So interesting that you mentioned that kind of that game as like in retrospect is something that really, there was a shift there, something changed and you found yourself. And I mean, I guess injury for any sports person, if your sense of meaning is so caught up in that, and then that gets taken away, then, that's something that we have to process in our own way. And if we haven't been given the tools to do that, then we may be more prone to lean into things that perhaps aren't that helpful. But where did it go from there? Because I know that you were a really, you ranked really highly when you were 30, I believe. You got 100 in the world, which is, unbelievable. So what was that journey then? Was it a journey through injury and then, finding that energy again, or like what happened across that period of your life?
Sure. So the event of playing Michael Cheng And then the next day I'm signing with an agent with IMG. Everyone thinks I'm the hot and now player. 3 months later, I've got an ankle injury. 8 months after that, I have ankle surgery. I rehab the ankle for 6 months. I come back to play my first match in the Miami Open, and I felt a click in the back of my knee, a pain in the back of my knee. And I ended up having knee surgery. So by the time I was 25 years old, my body was completely failing me. And again, another defining moment. When we look back at my junior career, when I had the defining moment, kind of skipped over my college defining moment where I went and transformed my serve because I wasn't going to play pro tennis in college at the level that I was at. And one summer I transformed my serve, and that elevated me to the top of the college ranks. And that allowed me to even play Michael Chang and get on the tour. So it was almost an accidental transformation, an accidental pro career. It wasn't really part of the plan. But when I had these injuries and these surgeries, I'm 25 years old, and I seriously considered quitting because my body was failing me. But at that time, I made another decision. I decided to study all things high performance. And so looking at where I'm at now, I'm 49 years old. I'll be 50 in October at the time of this recording. I just started studying everything, the physical body, injury prevention, mindset, spirituality, nutrition, biomechanics. And I sought out these incredible experts. And so I've been immersed in performance for 25 years. And so I came back from these injuries stronger, healthier, and mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I learned a lot of really cool tools that I teach now, 25 years later. And who knew? I didn't know what I was going to be doing when I was 25 years old. And to look back on my life and know that I was building this foundation was really powerful. Now, during that time, again, going through that process, I would say I was still a binge drinker in that, every couple of weeks, every month, I go out with the boys, or I go out have a date or whatever it was. And I would maybe drink too much. And I think about the mornings I would wake up, and then it would affect my training. And you're young, you can kind of bounce back faster than you can when you're older. But certainly there was probably a belief that, well, if I don't drink on these nights, what am I going to do? Like, I'm just going to sit home. And it felt weird for me to go out with people and then to not drink alcohol. Now, I will say, because I was so immersed in performance, I would, on Friday and Saturday nights, instead of going to the pubs or the bars, I would actually go to like health food stores and read food labels. But that's just so quirky. It's so weird. And that's not normal. And so I've kind of lived the life. I'm a bit of a loner in that respect. And so I embraced that, but it also was a bit of a lonely existence. I didn't really have a community in my 20s where I could kind of do some of the fun, spiritual, nutrition, health stuff. And so I felt like I was always kind of in between. Like, do I go out and have fun, or do I stay home and hermitize? And I was probably more of a hermit than going out, but I would use that going out as a bit of a social outlet.
Yeah. So you said something really interesting before. You said about how when you were 4, you made this decision that you were just going to excel at everything. And then sort of later in your career, there's all these kind of really powerful points where you decide, no, I'm going to do this, and you choose again effectively. So that energy of I'm going to be excellent, I'm going to excel, has that always been a positive for you? Or have there been times where that's come to get you and you've had to move through that as well?
It's a great question. I think, I've always been very driven. I think my parents, that's another reason why I've been involved in tennis for so long. I went through my tennis career. I broke the top 100 in the world at 30. I still had a lot of injuries. I think part of my career, my identity as an athlete was from the injuries I experienced. I built a successful online tennis instruction platform. We've helped millions of people around the world. It's called Tennis Evolution. And so I've been in tennis for a really long time, since I was 4 years old. And I think one of the reasons is because internally I was so driven. My parents had to hold me back. Nobody had to push me. So I think having that internal drive to go after something is a positive, right? It can keep you on the straight and narrow. Now, the dark side or the shadow side of it is, again, your identity gets so wrapped up into what you do or working hard and being able to turn off the mind and just be. That's a challenge for me to do that, because I'm wired just to take action. So when people say, when you want to achieve your goals, hey, you just got to take action. You just got to take the steps. That's not a problem for me. I'm always going to get out there and take the necessary steps. But I think that if you don't have that balance of, getting out of your head and into your body and into your heart and being able to slow down, which I'm learning, I continue to learn. And obviously I'm a coach, so I want to embody all of that to be able to take people to higher levels. So I have to live it myself. But I think there is a shadow side to it when you really look deeper of like, well, where does that come from? And what is that need or that desire to be validated, to be approved of, to be liked by the world, to really care what other people think? I think that's the part that has probably been a challenge for me internally. And how do I show up in the world instead of, when I go out in the world, even today, I'm going to go play tennis and I'm going to go to the club and people are still talking about like, oh yeah, that's Jeff Salzenstein. He did this. I don't want to be known as the guy that was top 100 in the world. It's a great thing to get your foot in the door, but just to be uniquely me, to be human, to really feel comfortable in my own skin is something that I think is important for all of us to really understand that we're so much more than our achievements. And that's one reason I work with successful business leaders, especially men. A lot of men and even women, if they're in that world of success and achievement, that is how they define themselves, how much money they make or their status or their title. And so I come from that angle of, gosh, I did achieve some really cool things, and I'm also not that person. Let me kind of show you the frameworks and how I navigated that and the work that I did to get to a place where I have more peace with just being who I am. So I don't know if I answered your question,
no, you did.
But we went into some places there that were interesting that I didn't know we were going to go there.
Well, no, I really appreciate that. I didn't know I was going to ask the question. But it kind of occurred to me as something I was really curious about. And I, thank you for being so honest and sharing that, because I think that energy, yeah, exactly. It can definitely be underneath that. There can sometimes be stuff to see and stuff to learn. And I love the fact that, as coaches, we have to be able to, we're not fully cooked, right? And like we're on our own journey, and that stuff's so important. So people are going to really resonate with that, I know. Well, look, hey, before we would love to hear a bit about your brother's journey. It's super important for you to be able to share that today. What is there a segue? Is there a bridge? Where do you sit with alcohol now? Does it have a role in your life? Like what's happening there? And then perhaps we can connect that into your brother's journey and his story.
It's fascinating with my journey because right now in this moment, I'm alcohol free. I have not touched a drink of alcohol we just crossed the 4-year mark.
Wow. Good for you.
And thank you. And what was interesting again is I would describe myself up until that point as a very light drinker, and again, we all have different definitions of what a light drinker is. But for me, especially leading up to that moment when I decided to do a 30-day alcohol-free challenge, I would say I would average maybe 2 drinks a week. So we're at 8 a month. And what I realized is that was, again, based around the social construct. At the time that I made the decision, I was single and I was on the dating apps and I would go out on dates. And typically I would drink because the person that I was with would order a glass of wine. Yeah. So it was for me it was more about them, right? Let me make them feel comfortable. Let me not think that there's something wrong with me, because again, immediately, especially even on the dating apps, if you put on your profile, you're alcohol free, all of a sudden there's judgments around, well, what road's this guy been down, or even just telling people that you don't drink alcohol. I have people say, oh, you're in recovery. And I'm like, well, no, but I'm alcohol free. That's the term that I prefer to use. So So I made that decision about 4 years ago, and it stemmed around performance. I went to a seminar, and he talked all about the implications of continuing to drink, what it's costing you, right? The amount of money, the amount of time, the productivity, the results, your health. And I already knew all this information, but it really just struck a chord that weekend. And I just came home. I did a 30-day challenge with myself, nobody else. And then I did another 30 and another 30. And by 90 days, I was like, I don't need to do it anymore. So it's really been very empowering for me to embrace this as a performance coach and have it be part of my framework, that I don't push on anyone, but I say, listen, one of the biggest health hacks is to not drink. It literally is the biggest health hack in the world. And what's so crazy to me is, out in the world, we're looking at all these other hacks, and I'm like, let's just not put the poison in the body. So the segue that I'll give you is, I break the top 100 at age 30, but it was literally for like a cup of coffee at 100 in the world. And then I dropped right back down. I had a lot of injuries during that time. I had plantar fasciitis. I had a shoulder. I had a groin. The body was definitely things that I struggle with. And I remember I was really going through a tough time. I'm 33, 34 years old, and I don't want to get on planes anymore to go to tournaments. I'm not feeling inspired to practice anymore. And that's a sure tell sign that something is off, burned out, stressed out, tired, probably down on myself because I wasn't achieving the goals that I thought that I could in tennis. So that goes back to that perfectionism and having to be perfect to the world, and then feeling like you fall short, super painful. And I remember going to visit my family in Florida. So my father remarried and had 3 children, and they're much younger than I. My half brother, Eric, was 17 years old at the time. So I was 17 when he was born. He was 17 when I went to go visit them around New Year's Eve of 2007. And I remember walking into his room, and I was still on the tour, kind of taking a break. I was having some health issues, but I was kind of waiting for those health issues to improve. And I remember going down there, and I walked into his room, sprawled out on the floor, passed out, a white foamy substance coming out of his mouth. My brother was overtaken by a cocktail of drugs. He was mixing and matching, and he was addicted. And in that moment, my pro tennis career ended. In that moment, I became a coach. In that moment, I started feeling a deeper sense of fulfillment by serving others. I rushed him to the hospital. Within 6 days, I had borrowed $36,000 that I didn't have to put him into rehab. I hired an interventionist to come down and talk to the family, and I got him into a rehab facility in Louisiana. I went to visit him, and then I drove home to Colorado, and I announced to the world where I grew up, I'm a tennis coach now. And so talk about a defining moment that on one hand, I was waiting to go back on the tour. My head wanted to go play tennis. My heart was done, but I wasn't listening to my heart. My brother lying on the floor, that was the moment. And I always tell people, if I wasn't there, if my father would have called me and said, your brother OD'd, he's in the hospital, he's going to be okay. If that would have happened on a phone call, who knows? But the fact that I visibly saw my brother lying in this state, and I knew the people around me weren't capable of really doing it the level that I could. I'm the action taker. I make shit happen. I made it happen. I moved home and I started coaching and built a successful coaching business in tennis, and then the online and what have you. And so that really began the journey with my brother of his journey around alcohol and drugs, where I was deeply involved with his process, with his success, with his triumphs, and with his failures and with his struggles. So I'll stop there because I'm sure there's questions, and then obviously I can pick up kind of what happened next in this story.
God, it's fascinating hearing each other. There's been so many things already that just really stand out, and that whole thing that you described about like being your achievements. Like that is the belief that I've carried around my entire life, and I'm still unpicking that to a degree. The origins of it, and then that I have moments where I see what's real, and it blasts through it, but it still will come and tap me on the shoulder every now and again. So it's fascinating hearing you talk about, like, I laughed when you said about, like, I get shit done, because that is me all over. Like, I get stuff done, but there is a price attached to it also. And there's something really special about that, the divine hand that takes you to that moment where you are with your brother when he needs you the most. And that changes everything for you, like that coming from heart. Like, I remember for so long, I was chasing this, like, I knew that I was meant to be doing something else. I knew that I was meant to be doing something else, but could I, because I'm the doer, I'm trying to find the thing. I'm trying to desperately uncover well, what is the thing? And the more that I strived for it, the more elusive it was. And it was in this moment of surrender that, oh, there's the thing. There's the thing. Like, when you're open-hearted, there's the thing. So I just, like, what a beautiful story. It's incredible.
Thank you. I think that, thank you for sharing that. I think that women, I'm going to be a little bit biased here, but I think women have a better handle on what you just described in general, being able to surrender, being able to open the heart. Men, we're not really taught to do that. We just have to go out there and conquer the world and stuff our emotions down. And what's really interesting about my journey is that I played at the highest level of tennis, and I competed, alpha dog. And I do think I would have been top 10 in the world or top 20 in the world with my athletic ability and with my mindset. And if I was more of a killer, if I was more like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or some of the other killers that are on the pro tour. But there was a conflict. I think there was an internal unconscious conflict, that I had this side of me that was ultra competitive, but I also had this really deep spiritual side. And I was studying spirituality and mindset and Zen and Buddhism and Qigong and Tai Chi when I was 24 years old as a pro tennis player 25 years ago. And so I think that it's a really unique blend combination, again, as a coach, that I can speak to a business leader who's a high achiever and say, listen, I know what you're experiencing. I get that. And there's this whole other side to unpack. Where does this come from? The childhood adversities, the childhood trauma. And trauma doesn't have to be something crazy difficult. My parents, even though they divorced, they got along. But I do believe the divorce, and then obviously the way my parents were available to me emotionally, impacted how I am in the world. And I've gone on the deep journey myself and continue to. I have a personal coach now helping me heal my childhood adversity. I have a relationship coach with the woman that I'm with. We are working on our skills in a relationship. And then I have a speaker coach. So I have 3 coaches right now that are coaching me, and it's all designed for me to keep up-leveling my game, but also to know myself so that I can show up in a really powerful way for others on this podcast, who I'm going to meet in the next hour, anything that I do, and just really knowing myself. And I think tapping into the heart is very important. And I realized that with my brother, helping him in that moment, putting the things in place for success. I'm really good at that. I can help people kind of put things in place for them to create success. And what was interesting is my first month of coaching in Colorado, all these kids on a tennis court, I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this so much more than I loved even playing Michael Chang at the US Open. I had so much anxiety playing Chang that day, wondering if I was going to embarrass myself in front of the world. And now I'm just giving, I'm just helping other people achieve their goals. And I really do get more fulfillment out of that. So my brother was the ultimate story for me of my ultimate student, if you will, or brother that I could guide and I could help when he was ready on a journey. And I had so much more fulfillment out of that than I did playing tennis.
That's that kind of heart to heart thing. There aren't words for that. It's beautiful. Well, dude, I know that Eric's journey, wasn't simple, right? And you've shared, I'm going to link to the TEDx that you shared with me, in the show notes for people to be able to watch. But yeah, with the remaining time that we've got together, what do you want to share for Eric? What do you want people to know from his story? And just please, just go in whatever way makes sense to you.
I will. So Eric goes to rehab. He's 17 years old. The rehab place I wanted to put him in was in Colorado, but they wouldn't accept him because he wasn't 18 yet. So I had to find a place that would put him as a 17-year-old, as a minor. And so he goes for 90 days, and then he comes to live with me in Colorado. So I said, hey, let's not go back to Florida. I moved home to Colorado where I grew up. We grew up in different households. I bought a home. I was basically going to raise him. We were going to do this together. And he stayed with me for 3 months. And then I figured out he started using again. And I was coached. I was told, listen, tell him he's got 5 days, 7 days to find another place to live. If he's not going to go back to the facility, if he's not going to be clean with you, he has to be out of the house within a week. And so he ended up going back to Florida to live with his parents, my father and my stepmother and my 2 sisters. And the next 5 years was an absolute destruction zone. Drug use, drug dealing, obviously lying, stealing, arrests, in and out of rehab, in and out of jail. And I wasn't in touch with him much. At that point, I drew a pretty hard line that, listen, if you're going to live that life, I'm living my life. When you're ready, I'll always be here, but I'm not going to do that. So I get updates from my father. Ultimately, my brother committed 2 felonies within a couple months of each other when he was about 23. And he was supposed to get a life term in prison if he was convicted for these 2 felonies for armed robbery, drug deal gone bad. And 2 weeks before he was going to be sentenced, the prosecuting attorney quit and got married, and she was going to throw the book at him. So when she quit, the new prosecuting attorney came in and knew the public defender, and they copped a plea deal. So he ended up getting a 4-year term. So he had basically prayed and said, listen, whatever God's supposed to give me, that's what I'm supposed to get. So he got 4 years in a maximum security prison in Florida. At this point, again, I wasn't really in touch with him. And about halfway through his prison term, maybe about a year in, he called me one day from prison. And he said, Jeff, he had just spent about 50 days in solitary confinement because he had gotten in a fight with a gang member. I mean, it's a whole different culture going to prison. This guy's from the suburbs. His mom taught him God. His dad taught him sports. Like, my brother was not supposed to be in prison. Like, that's just not how it was supposed to go. And so he was in solitary confinement. He called me one day and he said, Jeff, I really want to change, but I don't know how. The only life I know is the drug life, the thug life, the cool life. And I said, okay. And I sent him 2 books. I sent him The 4-Hour Workweek because I wanted to teach him entrepreneurship. I wanted to get his mind thinking. And then I sent him Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. And he read that book cover to cover, and he developed his entire world changed. He transformed his thinking. He created a value system. He started mentoring inmates. He started teaching classes. He started cleaning the toilets at 5 a.m. He started going to the prison yard to do pull-ups and push-ups. And he just became this Adonis physically, started praying and meditating and journaling. And we were doing calls every week from prison. I was coaching him from prison. And when he got out 4 years later, we were all obviously very happy, very relieved. But when he got out and he was in work release, he started drinking right away. And I said, Eric, that's a terrible idea. Like, don't do it. And I was adamant that he not drink, but obviously, he's 27 years old. He's a grown man. He can make the decisions, and he justified it. He said, listen, I made the transformations. I'm good. I can have a couple drinks and I'll be fine. And I said, I don't even play with that. Don't play that game. And for the first 3 years out of prison, overall, I think he did a pretty darn good job. Now, I come to find out that maybe it wasn't as good a job as I thought, but he drank. I don't know how much he drank. I wasn't living with him, but we worked together where I helped him. I got him in the rooms with a lot of top marketers and business coaches, And he was dominating. He was on Instagram with mindset and getting people pumped up. And he built a online business coaching business from scratch. Within 18 months, he went from zero to $70,000 a months. And it was unheard of how fast he just shot up. And that included him winning a speaking contest. He had realized that he had a talent for public speaking in prison. And then we got him into a big contest in Colorado, actually. And out of 600 participants, he won, which gave him the TED Talk. And he just had this gift. He was a networker. He was an extrovert. People loved to be around him. He had really good energy. And through that process, I stayed very close to him. And then about a year before his business just took off, I started noticing that a lot of ego was starting to come into play. I didn't feel as connected. And I remember coming back from a trip. It was March of 2020, 1 week before the pandemic hit. And I came back to my girlfriend. I said, something's different. I'm not vibing with him. Like, I'm going to have to pull away. I always kind of sensed it. And from that point on, he got another coach and his career went like this in the first year, 6 months. And then I finally got a call one day from his girlfriend about 6 months after, actually 5 months after that. It was in August of 2020. I was on vacation with my girlfriend and her children. And she said, yeah, he's using drugs now. And so the alcohol, I think, started increasing as the stress increased. Him not maybe dealing with his trauma, his anxieties, what he experienced in prison, what he experienced in his previous life. And he was just trying to be successful. And he thought he had the foundation, but he didn't really have the foundation. And he started using serious drugs. And that was about 2.5 years ago. And I just watched this downward spiral, watched it happen. It was like this upward trajectory for about 2.5 years. And then for 2.5, it was like this. And ultimately, 3 months ago, actually 2.5 months ago, he overdosed and he died on January 11th of this year.
I'm so sorry to hear that, man.
Thank you.
And I know that, this kind of stuff is hard to talk about, but I know how important it is for you to come and tell his story. Because, like anyone, underneath all of his troubles and is just this light that we all have. And he was just doing what made sense to him. He was trying to doing the best he could with what he had, right? And it just, for me, it goes to show that the beautiful journey that we can go on if we do find the courage to be alcohol free for a while or whatever it might be is incredible. And it's such a turning point for people. And thank you for coming and sharing that.
Yeah, thank you for letting me. I told you before we started that if my story and if Eric's story can save a life or help change a life for the better, that's why I wake up every morning. It aligns with what I do. It aligns with what I do as a performance coach. And when I say performance coach, I'm really, a health coach, a life coach, whatever you want a coach. I'm just helping people. Hey, if you want to improve your life, if you want to change, I will help you. This is what I want to do. And with my brother, it was my greatest success story, my greatest transformation that I witnessed in a client, in a brother. He was, for a stretch there, he was my best friend. I was his biggest fan. I was his mentor. I was his coach. When he won that speaking contest, there's a picture on Facebook, just the warm embrace, I'm just hugging him. And in that moment, that was one of the greatest moments of my life, was seeing him win that contest. Because I've won my whole life. I've won high school state championships. I won national championships at Stanford. I played in Wimbledon and the US Open. I've always been a winner. I just win. And he didn't win a lot. So when he won, that was really powerful for me. When he won that contest and watching him succeed when he was so down and out, and watching how, he always used to say, listen, if a convicted felon is 6'8", prison cell can transform his life. You can do it too. Anybody can do it. And, obviously there's a few things I wish were different. I wish he wasn't so stubborn and he would have listened to me and just said, okay, I have the blueprint for you. If you just stick with me on this, if we just stick together on this, you're going to go all the way. You will go all the way. Wherever you're going to go do some incredible things. And, the mind is a powerful thing. And I have theories around it. He was diagnosed with ADD at 9 years old. And I felt really strongly, even 20 years ago, that he should not be put on medication. He was put on Ritalin at 9 years old. Everyone, again, was doing the best they can, making the decisions that they could in that moment. But I believe strongly that he shouldn't. And I believe that starting on that path changed his brain, changed how he saw the world, changed how he could kind of relate to the world. And some people can take medications and ADHD medications and be okay. Others can't. And in his case, I think it was like a gateway, and then when he was 13, he was smoking pot and he was drinking. And, that's how he covered how he dealt with his pain. And I wish when he would have got out of prison that he would have said, you know what, I'm not going to drink and I'm going to create boundaries and I'm going to create structure in my life. But that was really tough for him. He really wanted to do it his way. And I always would hear him tell me around alcohol that he could see himself not using other drugs, but he could never see himself not using alcohol. The thought of for the rest of my life, I'm never going to drink. And I'm sure that's a common theme or phrase or things that you all hear when you're exploring the alcohol or alcohol-free lifestyle. But when I would hear that, it was tough for me because, again, it's easy for me not to drink. So it's so interesting, this paradox of me, the golden child, and Eric, the black sheep. We talked about how we were going to be on stages with our keynote, sharing how our stories are so different. The all-American kid at Stanford, and then the prison convict, and we're on a stage together and we're teaching the exact same principles, how we created success or how we transformed in our different ways, because I've transformed my life in different ways. But he obviously transformed in a much bigger way, and one regret that I have that I want to make sure that the point that I drive home, I think I did a really pretty darn good job supporting my brother. I had to hold boundaries when he was using, that I couldn't be involved in his life. But in learning more about the disease, and that obviously we know Eric was much more than his addictions, I drew a hard line where I wish if I could do it over again, I would have texted him once a month and just said, I love you, just because. I think that, in many ways, my love, and I'm just being vulnerable here, my love was conditional in that if he was using, I didn't want to have anything to do with him. And that probably really hurt him and really stung him to know that, he knew that I loved him, but I really kind of drew that kind of parental boundary of I'm just, no, army, military kind of approach. And I just wish I would have told him more that I loved him, regardless of his use. And that I wouldn't have even have brought up, hey, are you going to do this program? Are you going to get clean? Because the addict doesn't want to talk about those things. They just don't. They want to know that they're loved and they want to know that they're supported. It doesn't mean you have to be in their life. It doesn't mean you have to enable them. But I wish I would have done that differently. And going forward, obviously, I have my radar on that. And I think, addiction and people that struggle with addiction really, there's a stigma attached and they feel a lot of shame. And I think if we can find ways to make them feel loved, that would make the world a better place.
Wow. That was, I had a number of things I was going to ask you. You just answered them all. I did a much better job. I know we're really short on time, man, but I just want to really kind of evoke that image of you with your bro on stage. In what you're doing, you're on stage with him right here now, right? You're sharing his story. I'm really touched by it. I really just want to say a huge thank you for coming and sharing your story, Eric's story. And, you know, whatever it is you see and realize, like, this is a platform for you to be able to come and share whenever, you know, just reach out. And I'm sure that we'll stay in touch. And it's just so lovely to have you here sharing that, man.
Thank you. I just thought of something else I want to share. And I know we have to wrap up here, but he died on January 11th of 2023. We were not in touch. We were estranged for over a year. We had a big falling out because of, you know, the drug use. And, you know, again, I wish I would have texted him and said, you know, I love you more often. And I wish he would have known that. I know he did know that because I did so many other things, you know, along the journey, right, to try to put him in position to be healthy and successful. But 2 weeks after he died, I gave a speech to a company where Lenny met me. And it was the first time that I had shared at the end of the talk that my brother had passed away and spoke about his transformation. So I wrote him into my talk 2 weeks after. And that brought Lenny into my life and brought you all into my life. So what's happening now is because of my brother, I am getting on podcasts and getting into rooms and getting around people that I would have never normally met. And so it's opening up a whole world of healing and growth. And 2 days after that talk that I gave to Lenny's company, I gave Eric's eulogy. And I wrote his eulogy and I read it in the church. It was a beautiful ceremony. And, you know, the last couple of months have been challenging, but also because I'm a forward thinking, I just keep thinking, man, like I was already going to be this aspiring and successful keynote speaker and coach, but now I get to share my brother's story and his legacy and the positivity. And again, if we can create change and we can get people to really embrace an alcohol-free lifestyle, it's just so much better. It is just so much better to wake up every day, to sleep well, to feel healthy, to be focused, to be able to stand in your power, and to change your thoughts, to change your unconscious mind, to actually believe that this is the way to go and this is an empowering way to live. And I'm so passionate about it. So thank you for the opportunity to come on today and to share my story. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, if they're touched by this story and they want to learn more, if they think I might be able to support them in any way, they can go to my website at jeffsalzenstein.com. Awesome. They can email me at jeff@jeffsalzenstein.com. And one of the things that I'm doing now is I'm giving my phone number out. You can WhatsApp me, or you can send me a text, because if there's someone out there that's really struggling and they just need to talk to someone, or they need to be referred somewhere where they can get the support they need, they can call me. And so I'm in the US, so it's country code 1 and then 303 is the area code, 882-9028. If you want to put all that information in the show notes, you can.
Oh, we will.
But I want to make sure that you know, I don't want people to suffer in silence. And I think my brother, he was so out there in the world as a success story on Instagram and everyone saw it, but I knew what was going on behind the scenes and I knew he was suffering. Yeah. I just don't want people to suffer. And I want people to live a really happy, healthy life. And it starts with getting alcohol, in my opinion, getting alcohol out of your life and really embracing a healthy lifestyle without alcohol.
Yeah. Like you said, it's the ultimate hack. The ultimate hack. Yes.
You know it. Dude, what a conversation. Amazing. Yes. Thank you so much. And I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. I'm sure we'll have you on again when it makes sense. And it's been a pleasure having you, man.
Thank you
so much, Jeff.